How intelligent people surrender to collective delusion. Hey everyone, welcome back. Today I want to pull back the curtain on something that's been shaping how whole societies think and act, often without us even realizing it. Drawing from the insightful work of psychologist Mattias Desmet, we're going to explore the mechanics of mass formation, that powerful psychological process where large groups lock into a shared narrative and turn aggressively against anyone who dares apply clear logic or reason. But here's the deeper layer we'll unpack. This isn't some random cultural drift. It has roots in a deliberate war on the family unit that began under Bolshevism and continues today through feminism and Wokism. These aren't separate trends. They're connected threads that create the very isolation and anxiety that fuel mass formation. We'll walk through the argument step by step, using pure reasoning to show why this dynamic persists and why common counterpoints simply don't hold up under scrutiny. Stick with me, this is going to challenge some comfortable assumptions, but it will also point toward real ways out. Let's start with the basics of what mass formation actually is, because understanding it changes everything. Picture a society where more and more people feel profoundly disconnected, not just from each other, but from any deep sense of purpose or belonging. This isn't vague melancholy. It's a widespread loneliness that leaves folks carrying free-floating anxiety, frustration, and aggression that has no clear target. Then along comes a compelling narrative, spread through media and institutions, that pins that anxiety on a specific object, like a crisis or an enemy, and offers a collective strategy to fight it. Suddenly, people feel in control again. They feel united. They participate in rituals that reinforce the group bond. But here's the catch. This unity isn't built on real human connections between individuals. It's a hypnotic attachment to the collective ideal itself. Critical thinking fades. Absurd contradictions in the narrative get ignored. And most tellingly, anyone who steps back and points out the flaws with logic, evidence, or simple reasoning becomes a threat. The response isn't debate, it's anger, intolerance, even hostility. The group treats dissent as an attack on their newfound psychological stability. That's mass formation in action, and once it takes hold, it can grip 20 to 30% of people so tightly that they police everyone else, creating a suffocating atmosphere far beyond any traditional top-down control. If these truths hit you deep, those raw patterns or those sudden insights, drop a comment, share it with a friend who needs to hear it, and follow for more. Now, what sets the stage for this? Loneliness at scale. And the most natural, time-tested antidote to loneliness has always been the family. The nuclear family where real bonds of love, responsibility, and mutual support create meaning without needing a grand ideology. When families thrive, individuals have a foundation of purpose. Raising children, sharing life with a partner, passing on values through genuine connection. But what if that foundation is systematically dismantled? What if policies and ideologies treat the family not as a source of strength, but as an obstacle to be broken? That's exactly what happened under early Bolshevism, and the logic of cause and effect here is airtight. The family code introduced right after the revolution made marriage a casual civil contract, divorce effortless at the request of either spouse, and abortion fully legal and accessible. Illegitimacy was erased as a concept, with the state stepping in to raise children through communal creches and services. The explicit goal was to liberate women from what they called domestic slavery, turning the home into something obsolete so everyone could serve the larger collective. Free love was promoted, and the family was labeled a bourgeois relic tied to private property that had to wither away. The results followed predictably. Divorce rates exploded, single motherhood surged, and hordes of abandoned children roamed as social chaos. This wasn't accidental side effect. It was engineered atomization. People became isolated units, dependent on the state rather than on each other, primed for the kind of free-floating anxiety that mass formation feeds on. Some might counter that family breakdown is just a natural outcome of modernity or free market pressures, technology, urbanization, economic shifts making old structures outdated. But let's apply sheer logic here and watch that argument crumble. The timing doesn't match. These policies were imposed deliberately in the immediate revolutionary period, before widespread industrialization or consumer culture took hold, and they produced measurable spikes in divorce, orphanhood, and isolation far beyond anything seen in freer societies at the time. If it were purely economic or technological, why did the chaos force a pragmatic reversal later on, with restrictions on divorce and abortion plus pro-family propaganda to stabilize the population? That reversal itself proves causation. When the family was attacked as policy, society atomized. When the attack eased, some bonds reformed. Free market societies, by contrast, have historically rewarded stable families because they foster the responsibility, long-term thinking, and human capital that drive prosperity. Not through coercion, but through voluntary incentives. Blaming abstract modernity ignores the ideological intent and the direct policy levers that accelerated the breakdown. The family isn't some arbitrary tradition. It's the organic unit where meaning emerges from real interdependence, not state mandates. Destroy it, and loneliness isn't a byproduct. It's the designed outcome. This Bolshevik blueprint didn't vanish. It echoes powerfully in feminism and Wokism, which function as updated vehicles for the same assault on family structures. Feminism, with its Marxist foundations, reframes the family as inherently oppressive, a site where one partner dominates the other, much like class conflict but now along gender lines. It pushes for women to prioritize workforce participation and state-supported independence over marital bonds, treating motherhood and homemaking as chains rather than sources of fulfillment. Wokism takes it further, elevating identity categories, gender fluidity, intersectional grievances, above family loyalty altogether. The nuclear family gets portrayed as a rigid, patriarchal construct that must be disrupted in favor of fluid, state-mediated relationships and collective identities. Think about it. Policies and cultural pressures that normalize no-fault everything, delay or devalue marriage and children, and encourage reliance on institutional support instead of spousal or parental ties. The result? More atomization. More individuals adrift without that core sense of purpose from raising a family or honoring intergenerational bonds. This isn't liberation. It's the same old logic of breaking private connections to make people more malleable to collective narratives. Counter this with reason, and the objections fall apart one by one. Critics often say feminism and wokism are about choice and empowerment, not destruction, that people freely choose different paths in a free market of ideas. But logic demands we look at outcomes, not slogans. When these ideologies dominate cultural messaging, marriage rates drop, birth rates plummet below replacement, and loneliness surveys show epidemic levels, especially among the young. Choice sounds neutral until you realize the incentives are rigged. Economic and social penalties for traditional family paths, constant ideological reinforcement that family commitment equals oppression. If it were truly free choice, we'd see balanced flourishing across models, not a clear pattern of isolation and anxiety. Another objection claims these movements address real inequalities, so critiquing them is authority-oriented backlash. Yet that dodges the core mechanism. By framing the family itself as the problem rather than specific abuses within it, they universalize the attack, eroding the very institution that historically buffered against state overreach and mass delusion. History shows that when families weaken, vulnerability to mass formation rises because people seek meaning in grand ideologies instead of intimate bonds. Wokism's emphasis on group identity over individual family duty mirrors the Bolshevik shift from personal loyalty to collective allegiance. Same atomizing effect, different packaging. Let's tie it all back to mass formation with crystal clarity. Desmet's analysis reveals that loneliness from family erosion creates the perfect soil. Disconnected people struggle with meaning, generating that free-floating anxiety. A narrative then swoops in, whether about systemic crises or moral panics, and offers purpose through collective action. Participants don't cling to it because it's logically sound. They cling because it restores a sense of control and belonging, even if it demands sacrificing reason. Dissenters who insist on logic threaten to pop the bubble, so aggression follows naturally. It's not personal hatred. It's psychological defense. Feminism and wokism amplify this by accelerating the very loneliness that makes the next narrative irresistible. Under Bolshevism, the war on family directly preceded waves of ideological fervor. Today, the same pattern repeats. Weakened families mean more people ready to buy into absurd groupthink, intolerant of reasoned pushback. The mechanism is identical: atomization first, mass formation second. To make this concrete, consider a few key observations that cut through the noise. As Desmet has noted, in the grip of mass formation, even highly intelligent people lose critical distance. The higher the education, the more susceptible they become because schooling often trains conformity to dominant views rather than independent thought. The family, by contrast, teaches reasoning through real-world responsibility. Debts to spouses and children that demand honesty over narrative. Destroy that school of character and propaganda fills the void. Another point. The aggression toward logic isn't random. It protects the emotional payoff of the collective ritual. Point out inconsistencies in the family-disrupting ideology, and you expose the anxiety underneath which the mass cannot afford to face. In the end, what counters this? Not better narratives or forced authority, those just feed the cycle. The remedy lies in sincerity. A stubborn minority refusing to abandon truth-telling, even when it invites hostility. Speak plainly about the value of intact families, the logic of mutual bonds over ideological abstractions, and the observable link between family strength and societal resilience. This doesn't wake the masses overnight, but it prevents the formation from reaching its most destructive extremes, where it turns on dissenters before imploding. Families rebuild meaning from the ground up, one genuine connection at a time, starving mass formation of its fuel. So as we wrap up, reflect on this. The war on the family wasn't a side note in Bolshevism or a modern cultural quirk in feminism and wokism. It was, and is, the strategic demolition of the one institution that keeps us grounded, connected, and resistant to hypnotic groupthink. Mass formation thrives in the ruins. But by seeing the pattern clearly and choosing sincerity over conformity, we reclaim the tools to stand apart. Thanks for thinking through this with me. Until next time, keep questioning, keep connecting, and keep building what lasts. Stay free.